Part 3 of Tacitus's Germania. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Julie van Mallegem. Germania by Publius Cornelius Tacitus, translated by Alfred John Church and William Jackson Brodribb. Part 3. Next to the Catti on the Rhine, which is now a well-defined channel and serves as a boundary, dwell the Usurpi and Tencteri. The latter, besides the more usual military distinctions, particularly excel in the organization of cavalry, and the Catti are not more famous for their foot soldiers than are the Tencteri for their horsemen. What their forefathers originated, posterity maintain. This applies sport to their children, rivalry to their youths. Even the aged keep it up. Horses are bequeathed along with the slaves, the dwelling-house, and the usual rights of inheritance. They go to the son, not to the eldest, as does the other property, but to the most warlike and courageous. After the Tencteri came in former days the Bructeri, but the general account now is that the Camavi and Angrivari entered their settlements, drove them out, and utterly exterminated them with the common help of the neighbouring tribes, either from hatred of their tyranny, or from the attractions of plunder, or from heaven's favourable regard for us. It did not even grudge us the spectacle of the conflict. More than 60,000 fell, not beneath the Roman arms and weapons, but grander far, before our delighted eyes. May the tribes, I pray, ever retain, if not love for us, at least hatred for each other. For while the destinies of empire hurry us on, fortune can give no greater boon than discord among our foes. The Angrivari and Camavi are bounded in the rear by the Dalgabini and Cassowari, and other tribes not equally famous. Towards the river are the Frisi, distinguished as the Greater and Lesser Frisi, according to their strength. Both these tribes, as far as the ocean, are skirted by the Rhine, and their territory also embraces vast lakes which Roman fleets have navigated. We have ventured on the ocean itself in these parts. Pillars of Hercules, so rumour commonly says, still exist, whether Hercules really visited the country, or whether we have agreed to ascribe every work of grandeur wherever met with to his renown. Drusus Germanicus, indeed, did not lack daring, but the ocean barred the explorer's access to itself and to Hercules. Subsequently, no one has made the attempt, and it has been thought more pious and reverential to believe in the actions of the gods than to inquire. Thus far we have taken note of western Germany. Northwards the country takes a vast sweep. First comes the tribe of the Corsi, which, beginning at the Frisian settlements and occupying a part of the coast, stretches along the frontier of all the tribes which I have enumerated, till it reaches with the band as far as the Catti. This vast extent of country is not merely possessed, but densely peopled by the Corsi, the noblest of the German races, a nation who would maintain their greatness by righteous dealing. Without ambition, without lawless violence, they live peaceful and secluded, never provoking a war or injuring others by rapine and robbery. Indeed, the crowning proof of their valour and their strength is, that they keep up their superiority without harm to others. Yet all have their weapons in readiness, and an army if necessary, with a multitude of men and horses, and even while at peace they have the same renown of valour. Dwelling on one side of the Corsi and Catti, the Cherusci long cherished, unassailed, an excessive and enervating love of peace. This was more pleasant than safe, for to be peaceful is self-deception among lawless and powerful neighbours. Where the strong hand decides, moderation and justice are terms applied only to the more powerful, and so the Cherusci, ever reputed good and just, are now called cowards and fools, while in the case of the victorious Catti success has been identified with prudence. The downfall of the Cherusci brought with it also that of the Fossi, a neighbouring tribe, which shared equally in their disasters, though they had been inferior to them in prosperous days. In the same remote corner of Germany, bordering on the ocean, dwell the Cimbri, a now insignificant tribe, but of great renown. Of their ancient glory widespread traces yet remain. On both sides of the Rhine are encampments of vast extent, and by their circuit you may even now measure the warlike strength of the tribe, and find evidence of that mighty emigration. Rome was in her 640th year when we first heard of the Cimbrian invader in the consulship of Caecilius Metellus and Papirius Carbo, from which time to the second consulship of the Emperor Trajan we have to reckon about 210 years. So long have we been in conquering Germany. In the space of this long epoch many losses have been sustained on both sides. Neither Samnite nor Carthaginian, neither Spain nor Gaul, not even the Parthians, have given us more frequent warnings. German independence truly is fiercer than the despotism of Narcissus. What else indeed can the East taunt us with but the slaughter of aggressors, when it has itself lost Pacorus and been crushed under a Ventidius? But Germans, by routing or making prisoners of Carbo, Cassius, Scaurus, Aurelius, Servilius Capio, and Marcellus Manlius, deprived the Roman people of 5 consular armies, and they robbed even a Caesar of Varus and his 3 legions. Not without loss to us were they discomfited by Marius in Italy, by the great Julius in Gaul, and by Drusus, Nero, and Germanicus on their own ground. Soon after, the mighty menaces of Caius Caesar were turned into a jest. Then came a lull, until on the occasion of our discords and the civil war, they stormed the winter camp of our legions, and even designed the conquest of Gaul. Again were they driven back, and in recent times we have celebrated triumphs rather than won conquest over them. I must now speak of the Suevi, who are not one nation as are the Catti and Tencteri, for they occupy the greater part of Germany, and have hitherto been divided into separate tribes with names of their own, though they are called by the general designation of Suevi. A national peculiarity with them is to twist their hair back and fasten it in a knot. This distinguishes the Suevi from the other Germans, as it also does their own freeborn from their slaves. With other tribes, either from some connection with the Suevic race, or, as often happens, from imitation, the practice is an occasional one and restricted to youth. The Suevi, till their heads are grey, affect the fashion of drawing back their unkempt locks, and often they are knotted on the very top of the head. The chiefs have a more elaborate style, so much do they study appearance, but in perfect innocence, not with any thought of love-making, but arranging their hair when they go to battle, to make themselves tall and terrible. They adorn themselves, so to speak, for the eyes of the foe. The Semnones give themselves out to be the most ancient and renowned branch of the Suevi. Their antiquity is strongly attested by their religion. At a stated period, all the tribes of the same race assemble by their representatives in a grove consecrated by the auguries of their forefathers, and by immemorial associations of terror. Here, having publicly slaughtered a human victim, they celebrate the horrible beginning of their barbarous rite. Reverence also in other ways is paid to the grove. No one enters it except bound with a chain, as an inferior, acknowledging the might of the local divinity. If he chance to fall, it is not lawful for him to be lifted up, or to rise to his feet. He must crawl out along the ground. All the superstition implies the belief that from this spot the nation took its origin, that here dwells the supreme and all-ruling deity to whom all else is subject and obedient. The fortunate lot of the Semnones strengthens this belief. 100 cantons are in their occupation, and the vastness of their community makes them regard themselves as the head of the Suevic race. To the Langobardi, on the contrary, their scanty numbers are a distinction. Though surrounded by a host of most powerful tribes, they are safe, not by submitting, but by daring the perils of war. Next come the Rhodigni, the Aviones, the Angli, the Varini, the Eudoces, the Suardones, and Neuthones, who are fenced in by rivers or forests. None of these tribes have any noteworthy feature except their common worship of Eartha, or Mother Earth, and their belief that she interposes in human affairs and visits the nations in her car. In an island of the ocean there is a sacred grove, and within it a consecrated chariot covered over with a garment. Only one priest is permitted to touch it. He can perceive the presence of the goddess in the sacred recess, and walks by her side with the utmost reverence as she is drawn along by heifers. It is a season of rejoicing, and festivity reigns wherever she deigns to go and be received. They do not go to battle or wear arms. Every weapon is under lock. Peace and quiet are known and welcomed only at these times, till the goddess, weary of human intercourse, is at length restored by the same priest to her temple. Afterwards, the car, the vestments, and, if you like to believe it, the divinity herself, are purified in a secret lake. Slaves perform the rite, who are instantly swallowed up by its waters. Hence arises a mysterious terror and a pious ignorance concerning the nature of that which is seen only by men doomed to die. This branch indeed of the Suevi stretches into the remoter regions of Germany. Nearer to us is the state of the Hermundari. I shall follow the course of the Danube as I did before that of the Rhine. A people loyal to Rome. Consequently, they, alone of the Germans, trade not merely on the banks of the river, but far inland, and in the most flourishing colony of the province of Rhaetia. Everywhere they are allowed to pass without a guard, and while to the other tribes we display only our arms and our camps, to them we have thrown open our houses and country seats, which they do not covet. It is in their lands that the Elbe takes its rise, a famous river known to us in past days. Now we only hear of it. The Narisci border on the Hermundari, and then follow the Marcomanni and Quadi. The Marcomanni stand first in strength and renown, and their very territory, from which the Boii were driven in a former age, was won by valour. Nor are the Narisci and Quadi inferior to them. This I may call the frontier of Germany, so far as it is completed by the Danube. The Marcomanni and Quadi have, up to our time, been ruled by kings of their own nation, descended from the noble stock of Maroboduus and Todrus. They now submit even to foreigners, but the strength and power of the monarch depend on Roman influence. He is occasionally supported by our arms, more frequently by our money, and his authority is none the less. Behind them, the Marsigni, Gotini, Osi, and Buri close in the rear of the Marcomanni and Quadi. Of these, the Marsigni and Buri, in their language and manner of life, resemble the Suevi. The Gotini and Osi are proved by their respective Gallic and Pannonian tongues, as well as by the fact of their enduring tribute, not to be Germans. Tribute is imposed on them as aliens, partly by the Sarmate, partly by the Quadi. The Gotini, to complete their degradation, actually work iron mines. All these nations occupy but little of the plain country, dwelling in forest and on mountain tops. For Suevia is divided and cut in half by a continuous mountain range, beyond which live a multitude of tribes. The name of Ligi, spread as it is among many states, is most widely extended. It will be enough to mention the most powerful, which are the Hari, the Helvecones, the Manimi, the Helissi, and the Nehanavali. Among these last is shown a grove of immemorial sanctity. A priest in female attire has the charge of it, but the deities are described in Roman language as Castor and Pollux. Such indeed are the attributes of the divinity, the name being Alcis. They have no images, or indeed any vestige of foreign superstition, but it is as brothers and as youths that the deities are worshipped. The Hari, besides being superior in strength to the tribes just enumerated, savage as they are, make the most of their natural ferocity by the help of art and opportunity. Their shields are black, their bodies dyed. They choose dark nights for battle, and by the dread and gloomy aspect of their death-like host, strike terror into the foe, who can never confront their strange and almost infernal appearance. For in all battles it is the eye which is first vanquished. Beyond the Ligi are the Catones, who are ruled by kings a little more strictly than the other German tribes, but not as yet inconsistently with freedom. Immediately adjoining them, further from the coast, are the Rugi and Lamovi, the badge of all these tribes being the round shield, the short sword, and servile submission to their kings. And now begin the state of the Suiones, situated on the ocean itself, and these, besides men and arms, are powerful in ships. The form of their vessels is peculiar in this respect, that a prow at either extremity acts as a forepart, always ready for running into shore. They are not worked by sails, nor have they a row of oars attached to their sides, but, as on some rivers, the apparatus of rowing is unfixed, and shifted from side to side as circumstances require. And they likewise honour wealth, and so a single ruler holds sway with no restrictions, and with no uncertain claim to obedience. Arms are not with them, as with the other Germans, at the general disposal, but are in the charge of a keeper, who is actually a slave, for the ocean forbids the sudden inroad of enemies, and besides, an idle multitude of armed men is easily demoralized. And indeed it is by no means the policy of a monarch to place either a nobleman, a free-born citizen, or even a freedman, at the head of an armed force. Beyond the Suiones is another sea, sluggish and almost motionless, which we may certainly infer girdles and surrounds the world, from the fact that the last radiance of the setting sun lingers on till sunrise with a brightness sufficient to dim the light of the stars. Even the very sound of his rising, as popular belief adds, may be heard, and the forms of gods and the glory round his head may be seen. Only thus far, and here rumour seems truth, does the world extend. At this point the Suevic Sea, on its eastern shore, washes the tribes of the Asti, whose rites and fashions and style of dress are those of the Suevi, while their language is more like the British. They worship the mother of the gods, and wear as a religious symbol the device of a wild boar. This serves as armour and as a universal defence, rendering the votary of the goddess safe even amidst enemies. They often use clubs, iron weapons, but seldom. They are more patient in cultivating corn and other produce than might be expected from the general indolence of the Germans. They also search the deep, and are the only people who gather amber, which they call glesum, in the shallows, and also on the shore itself. Barbarians as they are, they have not investigated or discovered what natural cause or process produces it. Nay, it even lay amidst the sea's other refuse, till our luxury gave it a name. To them it is utterly useless. They gather it in its raw state, bring it to us in shapeless lumps, and marvel at the price which they receive. It is, however, a juice from trees, as you may infer from the fact that there are often seen shining through it reptiles and even winged insects, which, having become entangled in the fluid, are gradually enclosed in the substance as it hardens. I am therefore inclined to think that the islands and countries of the West, like the remote recesses of the East, where frankincense and balsam exude, contain fruitful woods and groves, that these productions, acted on by the near rays of the sun, glide in a liquid state into the adjacent sea, and are thrown up by the force of storms on the opposite shores. If you test the composition of amber by applying fire, it burns like pine wood, and sends forth a rich and fragrant flame. It is soon softened into something like pitch or resin. Closely bordering on the Seones are the tribes of the Setones, which, resembling them in all else, differ only in being ruled by a woman. So low have they fallen, not merely from freedom, but even from slavery itself. Here Suevia ends. As to the tribes of the Pocini, Veneti, and Feni, I am in doubt whether I should class them with the Germans or the Sarmate, although indeed the Pocini, called by some Bastonnais, are like Germans in their language, mode of life, and in the permanence of their settlements. They all live in filth and sloth, and by the intermarriages of the chiefs they are becoming in some degree debased into resemblance to the Sarmate. The Veneti have borrowed largely from the Sarmatian character. In their plundering expeditions they roam over the whole extent of forest and mountain between the Pocini and Feni. They are, however, to be rather referred to the German race, for they have fixed habitations, carry shields, and delight in strength and fleetness of foot, thus presenting a complete contrast to the Sarmate, who live in wagons and on horseback. The Feni are strangely beast-like, and squalidly poor. Neither arms nor horses have they. Their food is herbs, their clothing skins, their bed the earth. They trust wholly to their arrows, which, for want of iron, are pointed with bone. The men and women are alike supplied by the chase, for the latter are always present, and demand a share of the prey. The little children have no shelter from wild beasts and storms, but a covering of interlaced boughs. Such are the homes of the young, such the resting place of the old. Yet they count this greater happiness than groaning over field labour, toiling at building, and poising the fortunes of themselves and others between hope and fear. Heedless of men, heedless of gods, they have attained that hardest of results, the not needing so much as a wish. All else is fabulous, as at Halusi and Exiones have the faces and expressions of men, with the bodies and limbs of wild beasts. All this is unauthenticated, and I shall leave it open. End of Part 3. End of Germania, by Publius Cornelius Tacitus, translated by Alfred John Church and William Jackson Brodribb.